Thank you. Okay, I will call the Assembly Committee on Education to order. Welcome, everyone. Will the Secretary please call roll?
Assemblywoman Duran,
Here.
Assemblyman Flores,
Present.
Assemblywoman Gorlow,
Here.
Assemblywoman Hanson,
Here.
Assemblywoman Hardy,
Here.
Assemblywoman Krasner,
Here.
Assemblywoman Marzola,
Here.
Assemblyman MacArthur,
Here.
Assemblywoman Miller,
Here.
Assemblywoman Nguyen,
Here.
Assemblywoman Tolles,
Here.
Assemblywoman Torres,
Here.
Chair Bilbray Axelrod.
Here. And please note for the record, we have everyone present, so we do have a quorum. Welcome to those viewing our meeting online or through our YouTube channel, and to those participating through video or by phone. Just a couple of housekeeping rules before we begin. I would like to remind you, if you haven't done so already, please make sure to mute your microphone when you're not speaking to minimize background noise. Committee members, please keep your cameras on for the duration of the meeting to ensure a quorum is present. We do expect courtesy and respect in this committee. We don't always agree on policy, but we need to be respectful of each other in this process. Reminder that you can see all the materials that we refer to on Nellis, and they can be accessed there. And for those of you watching online in this virtual world, we do have several screens that we're looking at. So if you see members looking away, they're looking at materials for the committee, we hope. Our remarks for the hearing, we'll have two bill hearings this afternoon. I have allocated equal time for testimony and support, opposition, and neutral. Each person providing testimony will be allowed a maximum of 2 minutes. Staff will time each speaker to ensure everyone is given equal opportunity to speak. Speaker are urged to avoid repetition made by previous speakers, and we will limit the overall time of each testimony to 30 minutes. If you wish to testify and have not done so already, please register online through the link provided in the agenda for the meeting. Upon successful registration, you will be given a telephone number, meeting ID, and instructions for joining the meeting. So we have an accurate record and count. We ask that you don't share this information, but instead encourage others to register online to participate. You may also submit public comment in writing, either in addition to or in lieu of testimony. If you do not want to testify but still want to register, for a record of your interest, you can do that on a particular bill. The chair or members of the committee may request testifiers to submit documentation to support their testimony. I will now open the hearing on AB 105. This bill revises provisions governing interscholastic activities. Assembly Roberts, please begin when you are ready.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, members of the committee, and I appreciate you hearing this bill. I'm Assemblyman Tom Roberts, Assembly District 13 in Southern Nevada. Today I'm presenting Assembly Bill 105. I'll first talk about a little bit about how this bill came about. I'll give a little background on the NIAA. Then I'll go over the technical aspects of this bill, and I'll open it up for questions if that pleases you, Madam Chair. So how this bill came about is my county commissioner reached out to me. There was a group of parents that were a little upset with the NIAA and the lack of response from that board and that agency. And so she was supposed to be here today. I had one parent that was the spokesperson for that group. She was supposed to be here today, but due to a family issue, she could not. So if you would please allow me to briefly just read a quick statement from her, and then I'll move to the other portions of the bill. This is from Donna Ranone. AB 105 is a bill that was created to help deal with an issue that has been magnified recently due to the pandemic. Youth sports has been an issue that has been in the forefront of many parents' concerns. It has been a very difficult time dealing with unprecedented issues, and the NIAA has a monumental task in addressing these issues. One thing that became apparent during this time is that parents of student athletes and student athletes themselves did not feel that they were being heard. So as a way to open communication between these groups, the idea of this bill came about. The two parent positions can increase transparency by helping to communicate any ideas and issues, both to rest of the board and to also help give a broader view and also back to the constituency to help them better understand how the NIAA makes their decisions. Their perspective as a parent can be extremely helpful by widening the scope of discussions and therefore helping the NIAA board make the best decisions for student athletes. The bill also requests the addition of 2 student athlete positions on any advisory board. Our state is filled with phenomenal young people who want to make a difference. By adding these positions, you are allowing the youth of Nevada to become part of the process. No one has a better perspective on what is happening and changing in youth sports than the students themselves. Playing sports teaches children many things, including hard work, compromise, time management, and how to be part of a team. These skills will make them valuable members of the NIAA advisory boards. AB 105 is not meant as a criticism of the NIAA, but to make a good team even stronger. It is taking what we have learned and heard from people in our state and implementing change. So with that, I'll go over to a little background on what I know from the NIAA. NRS 385B.050 gives permissive language for the county school district trustees to form a nonprofit to be known as the Nevada Interscholastic Activities Association. This allows the NIAA to control, supervise, and regulate all interscholastic athletic activities, events, and other interscholastic activities of all public schools and homeschooled children in the state. It also allows private schools, charter schools, parochial schools to be involved if they choose to join. Nevada Right Statute does not have any guidance on the makeup of the board or any advisory boards. That is completely left up to the nonprofit NIAA. According to the federal tax records, the NIAA has about a $2 million revenue stream every year. A quarter of that is spent on salaries for the executive director and full-time positions and other overhead expenses. The current NIAA board is comprised of 9 members. There are 3 school district trustees and 6 school administrators. There are no other outside involvement on that board. The website used to list an advisory board that was over sports medicine and rules. However, a recent search doesn't have any information on that, so I'm not aware of any advisory boards that the agency has at this time. So now I'll go over the bill. So section, as I stated before, 385B.050 is hereby amended to read as follows. Section 1 basically goes over what I've already talked about. It was existing language. Section 2, item 2 of section 1 adds that any board member or any board formed to govern the Nevada Interscholastic Activities Association must include at least 2 members who are parents or guardians of pupils who participate in a sanctioned sport. Number 3 also adds any advisory board formed to advise a governing board of the Nevada Interscholastic Activities Association must include at least 2 members who are pupils currently participating in a sanctioned sport. The intent of this bill was to provide people on the board that are not members of the school district to provide some weigh-in and balance to the board. As you saw by the makeup of the board, 2 members could hardly outweigh the current board members. And any balance in the state, the NIAA, through their bylaws, will be able to adjust the board members to ensure appropriate representation from different sections of the state. And so with that, I'll open it up for any questions, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Assemblyman Roberts. I'm going to ask a couple things of you. If you could please, the letter that you have from Donna, was it Ramon? Renone. If we could put that on the record, if you could send that over so we could have that as an exhibit. And also, could you go ahead and spell her name just so the committee secretaries have that correct?
So it's Robert Adam Ida Nora, Ocean, Nora, Easy, Rainone.
Showing your military colors.
Don't ask a cop to spell.
Yeah, or con, there you go. And my other question was, I did pull up the board members. And then you had mentioned advisory board, and I was wondering if perhaps maybe the advisory board had become the liaison non-voting board. I see that is everything. We've got superintendents and different private schools, charter schools, commissioner from Reno. So I don't know if that is now the advisory board, but are you familiar with this?
No, in my research, I did not see the liaison boards mentioned on the website. Previously, it was advisory boards, which is why we did the language as we did. Something could have changed, or I researched some old language, but this is from the parent that I worked with.
Okay, yeah. When I printed out the board, it was a 2-pager, and the second page was the liaison board.
Okay.
So, but that's things change. So we could, and I think we have someone from the board who is planning on testifying as well, so we can figure that out. At this point, do we have any questions from the committee? I see Assemblywoman Torres, Assemblywoman Miller. We have Assemblywoman Gorlow and Assemblywoman Tolles. All right, so let's start with Assemblywoman Torres.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Assemblywoman Roberts, for your presentation. I really do appreciate it. I think that this is an excellent way for us to continue to engage families in our schools and our school decision-making process. So thank you for bringing forth this legislation. I guess my only question, I'm just wondering if this bill is specific enough, just given that school sports, the seasons, the way those work, they're generally not in a sport for the entirety of the year. They might be in it for just a semester or quarter, whatever that season would be. And so I'm just wondering if we can add some clarifying language to the legislation, or if it's necessary for us to add some clarifying language to this bill so that we can make it clear that it would be a student who participates in at least one sport in an academic year. And then for that to be revisited each academic year, especially in the case that students might not continue to be in that sport.
Well, thank you for the question. And through you, Madam Chair, to Assemblywoman Torres. When we were drafting this piece of legislation, the permissive language didn't really get into a lot of details on the nonprofit. I think the original language was just to say, look, if you want to form this nonprofit, and NRS also delineates some of the other duties that they require, or at least the state requires of this agency or this nonprofit. So I felt that I didn't want to pin the hands of the board in the manner of what they could figure out and put some of the minute languages on that. They could certainly put that in there for active parents, or if you're a parent, obviously your child should still be involved in the sports. As if you're a student athlete, you should still be involved. But we could certainly put that in any amendment that we move forward so that it's clear.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Assemblywoman.
We'll move on to Vice Chair Miller.
Thank you, Chair. And my question, which now seems like a suggestion, actually it is in line with what Assemblywoman Torres said. So if it will be a one-year term, there's nothing in the bill about if, for instance, the parent was no longer the parent of, or I should say, the student is no longer participating in sport. So if the student graduates, how long is the term that the parent's serving? If the student graduates or the student quits athletics, what type of mechanism is in place? Because then at that point, they're no longer actually the parent of a student participating. So I think just sometimes when this is such a brief bill that sometimes I think there needs to be a little more there, not to tie the hands, but just for clarity for moving forward, because we all know we get into situations and then it's like, oh wait, their son quit, their daughter graduated. Now what do we do? And So just kind of how that will be determined. So I don't know have you thought along those lines, Assemblyman?
Well, thank you. Thank you for the question, and through you, Madam Chair, to Assemblywoman Miller. Yeah, you know, I thought about that, and as I mentioned before, because the statute was already kind of silent on the makeup of the board. I mean, it doesn't say that you have to have 9 members or 6 members or any amount of members. So I felt it wasn't necessarily necessary. They could cover that in their bylaws, but those are definitely good suggestions. And if we need that clarity in order to get this done, then I'll certainly add it.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Vice Chair. And we'll move on to Assemblywoman Gorlow.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Assemblyman, for being here. I think some of my questions were already answered as far as the terms and the 9 members. Do you know if that's in their bylaws, or is that kind of fluid on how many members of their board they are allowed to have?
So I don't have their bylaws. Well, excuse me. Thank you for the question. Through you, Madam Chair, to Assemblywoman Gorlow.
You can go directly.
Okay, thank you. I don't have their bylaws. I would assume they file those every year, and a lot of that is not public record for nonprofits. So I don't know what they have.
Okay, and I apologize if I missed this. Would these members be appointed or elected?
So it appears by the current members that they are appointed by the board. I don't know if they're permanent slots or rotated slots. Over the years, some of that has changed on who are the members. Like I said, there's 3 trustees. Obviously, those people are elected. The other administrators are basically by position or by their duties in the school district that they serve.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, Assemblywoman Gorlow. And I think a lot of what is their it's not in statute, it's in NAC. So that's where you can find it. That makes sense. All right, we'll move on to Assemblywoman Tolles.
Thank you so much, Chair, and thank you, Assemblyman Roberts, for bringing this bill forward. As a mom of 2 students who have participated in athletics, I definitely see the value in being able to have that parent and student voice on that committee. I know that there was times where I would have appreciated some of that input as a parent myself. I think it just really rounds out the policies and the oversight in a really good way. And it's particularly interesting that you have pupils, because we think about one of the purposes of sports is to prepare these students in leadership and in life skills. And I think just having some pupils engage on a board level is another aspect of preparing those students and for future endeavors. The only question that I had was I noticed that there was not an effective date on here. I just happened to catch that while we were going through the bill, and I'm just wondering, is this effective upon passage, or could it be something that we could look at putting an effective date to give the board time to fill those positions?
Well, thank you for the question, Assemblywoman Tolles, and you're correct. There isn't an effective date. We'd have to ask legal. If it's silent, what does that mean? I don't know if you have them on.
We actually do not have legal right now.
Okay.
Our legal has gone over to drafting.
Okay.
But Christy, are you able to speak to this?
Yes, Christy Robusto, policy analyst for the record. When there is not an effective date at the bottom of a bill, it becomes, if it is passed through, it becomes effective, I believe it's in October. So there is an established effective date in NRS for a bill that does not have one stipulated in the bill language.
Follow-up, Chair?
Sure.
Thank you so much for the indulgence. So I think I would just be interested in pursuing if we would want to put an effective date that would fall over the summer so that it could be before the next academic year. Perhaps July 1st is another common effective date.
Great suggestion, and it seems that I have to change some language anyway, so I'll look at that as well. Thank you.
And I'm trying to read the chat as well. I think, Vice Chair, did you have a question, a clarifying question?
No, Chair.
Okay. All right. I apologize for that. Okay. Are there any other questions from the committee? Assemblywoman Hardy.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Assemblyman Roberts, for this bill. I too think it's good to have input of parents and students that are actually playing these sports. Just one question, and maybe this already kind of went along with the other things you talked about that isn't in statute, but's in the bylaws. So if a parent or student were wanting to be on the board, how they do that? Do they just submit their names, or they apply, or is there a process, or again, is that just covered in the bylaws?
Well, thank you for the question. I don't know that if NAC or their bylaws cover board appointments. It probably does. I did not get the research done on that, but we could certainly either highlight that to fall in line with other board appointments as well. So it's a good suggestion.
Okay, yeah, just how would these people how would they know about it, or if they want to do it, just some direction of how to go about that. So thank you.
Okay. And any other questions from committee members? All right. Seeing none, we will move on to hear testimony in support, opposition, and neutral of AB 105. Please remember to clearly state and spell your name and limit your testimony as close as you can to 2 minutes. We will begin testimony in support of AB 105. Staff from Broadcast and Production Services, please add the first caller.
To testify in support on AB 105, please press star 9 now to take your place in queue. Caller with the last 3 digits of 874, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Rebecca Garcia, REBECCA-GARCIA. Good afternoon, Chair. My name is Rebecca Garcia, President of the Nevada PTA. Nevada PTA, for more than 80 years, has advocated on behalf of families and children in our state, and we are supportive of AB 105 in providing greater representation for families and students. As we have communicated with Assemblyman Roberts, Nevada PTA does feel it is important, though, that it is clearly stated that the parent representatives should not be employees of a school district or charter school. Involving all stakeholders is critical to ensuring everyone impacted in decisions has a voice in the process. Often we have seen, due to either convenience or because of current engagement, that parent representative positions are filled by employees, which dilutes the purpose of having external parent voices on the committee. So again, we are supportive and just hope that that can be clarified so that authentic parent voices are included in this process. And we appreciate engaging more stakeholders. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Garcia. And we'll move on to the next caller in support.
Caller with the last 3 digits of 530, please press star 6 now to unmute. Caller with the last 3 digits of 530, please press star 6 now to unmute. I'll go to the next caller. We can come back. Caller with the last 3 digits. Oh, there we go. Caller with the last 3 digits of 530. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Marilyn Kirkpatrick, Marilyn Kirkpatrick. Thank you, Madam Chair and committee members, for the opportunity to testify in support of this bill, and thank you to Assemblyman Roberts. We had a lot of kids that were trying to figure out during the summertime what was going on with sports and really didn't know where to reach out, and then their parents were asking, and so actually this idea came up from the students of Clark County that wanted to be part of the process so that they could at least share information across the board. And so for all those reasons of encouraging our young folks to be part of civic engagement and encouraging parents to be part of the plans going forward, I support AB 105, and thank you for all the good questions that you all had. And I think that there's some room to make some more clarifying pieces of this and to make our community across the state have a voice when it comes to our students. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much for calling in to testify. I know you're very busy, Commissioner, and I feel very honored to have someone of your stature calling into the committee to testify. So thank you. Move on to the next caller.
Caller with the last 3 digits of 504. Please press *6 now to unmute. You will have 2 minutes. Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry to interrupt. You will have 2 minutes. Please slowly spell and state your name for the record, and you may begin.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and Board. My name is Gina Strotter, GinaStroughter, and I am in support of the AB 105 bill. As a parent with a senior who was unable to play this year, I feel it's very important that we get the children involved that are playing this sport, and I really appreciate you guys giving me the time to be able to say that I am in support of the bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Strotter, and I think I can speak on behalf of the committee. We're all just heartbroken for the kids who are missing out on their athletic seasons and theater seasons and choir seasons and all of those things. So thank you for calling, and hope to get you guys all back soon. Next caller in support.
To anyone who has just joined to testify in support on AB 105, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, at this time, there are no more callers in the queue to testify in support on AB 105.
Thank you very much, broadcast. Next, we will hear testimony in opposition of AB 105.
To testify in opposition on AB 105, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits of 184. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You'll have 2 minutes and may begin.
Yes, Madam Chair. My name is Jeffrey Proffitt. Last name spelled Proffitt. And I need a correction. I don't know how the technology worked, but I'm actually in favor of this bill, not in opposition. It just kind of put me in the wrong queue. Do you want me to continue on, or?
Yeah, we are all going through some growing pains, Mr. Proffitt, so we will make sure that you are in the correct silo, but go ahead with your testimony.
Okay. Hey, who knows? I might have pressed the wrong button too, but on behalf of the sheet metal workers, 2,000 sheet metal workers across the state of Nevada and their families who participate in all types of schooling throughout the Mings and obviously through sports, we appreciate Assemblyman Roberts for bringing this bill forward. We are in favor of AB 105. The more community and parent input that we could put into these committees, the better. I want to reiterate what Assemblyman Roberts says. We're not here to bash the NIAA. I am in favor of the NIAA. They've done a great job with my kids. My son is leaving this June to go on a football scholarship, and a lot of the things that the NIAA has done throughout the years, we're a benefit from. So I think this is an enhancement. This is a good thing going forward, and we are fully in support of it. And thanks, Madam Chair, for the time.
Thank you very much again, Mr. Profit. So now we will move on, hopefully, to our opposition testimony.
Caller with the last 3 digits of 000, please press *6 now to unmute. Caller with the last 3 digits of 000, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Paul Anderson. It's Paul J. Anderson. I'm an attorney with the Maupin Cox and Lagoy law firm in Reno, and I have been legal counsel to the NIAA for the last 25 years. So one of the things I thought I'd try to do here today is answer a few of the questions that were raised by members, and also clarify a few things. First of all, I don't know that the committee is aware, but the NIAA is not funded at all by the state of Nevada in any fashion. Our sources of funding are limited to dues from our member schools, monies received from regional and state tournaments, and certain sponsorships. And so adding members to our board, parents, while that's obviously the committee's in favor of something along those lines, there's a significant cost that's going to be involved with that. We have 4 board meetings per year. Those rotate between Clark County and Northern Nevada. Prior to the COVID situation, a lot of that's done electronically now, but we hope to be going back to in-person meetings. And there's travel costs, there's boarding costs, there's those sorts of things that are involved. So I think those are matters that the committee needs to take into consideration before just adding a couple of parents to the process. The other thing, and I think is a good question that was raised, is how do we select a member or 2 members to our board or students to advisory committees. We represent all the schools in the state that play, and they play at different levels. They play at different classification sizes and whatnot, as I'm sure you're all aware. The high school in Smith Valley is very different than a 5A school in Clark County or Washoe County, and their interests are much different. And how do we pick where these parent representatives come from? How do we pick where the students come from? I think those are all issues that need to be looked at in depth. And to also clarify, so that you're aware, if you're interested, we do not have bylaws. We are governed by the Nevada Administrative Code. We have a significant number of regulations that apply to the board and to our athletic programs, our eligibility, and that sort of thing, and that's all found at NAC Chapter 385B. That includes how our board's selected and how it's divided based upon population and those sorts of things. So if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer those, and if not, I appreciate your time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Anderson. I do have a quick question. Are your board members paid at all?
They are not paid. No, they're all unpaid. However, their travel costs, per diem costs, are all covered to the extent they're incurred, as I say, when we have our meetings, our in-person meetings and travels involved, which it typically is for half the board. Also, I know there was an issue raised by Mr. Roberts, or a question as to our liaisons. Liaisons are selected from various groups within the organization, and they are non-voting members of our board that provide significant input to the board as to what's going on. And for instance, we have a liaison member from each of the classifications in the state, the 5A schools, north and south, 4A, 3A, 2A, and 1A. And then we also have a liaison, as was mentioned, from the Superintendents Association. And actually, our 17 superintendents are our legislative commission, and that commission actually sits above our board of control. So it's a bit more complicated than you might.
A couple more questions from the committee. I'm going to also clarify. I was able to find that liaison non-voting committee list. Was that formally, as Assemblyman Roberts had discussed, was that formally called an advisory board?
No, the liaisons are non-voting members of the board that, like I say, are selected from various aspects of the association. Just continuing on, we have a liaison from our officials association, so that our referees and officials are represented.
I understand that. I understand that. I think that,
and so those are appointed by the executive director as well as the board, and there's a certain rotation that takes place with respect to the various seats.
Yes, and I see that the terms are written, and perhaps Assemblyman Roberts could clarify. At some point, I believe there was what was called an advisory board. You had that information. Is that correct, Assemblyman Roberts? That was actually to Assemblyman Roberts.
I got that off their website and some old newsletters that they had. Obviously, I didn't do enough research in the NAC like you did, Assemblywoman or Madam Chair. So, I mean, my expert witness and done the research, be here today. So I apologize for not having information or a lack of.
It's we're all dealing with this this new day, and I'd like to point out I serve on several boards as well, and I think COVID has kind of shown us that there is more than one way to get things done. So if the concern was the price of getting students or parents involved, maybe the committee could look at continuing their meetings virtually, which, as we have shown, works pretty well. I know we have a couple of questions for you, Mr. Anderson, from committee members. I know I have Assemblywoman Hanson, and it looked like Assemblywoman Torres. But before that, could I connect with Ms. Robusto, who would also like to give some additional information that I would like to have clarified?
Christy Robusto, Committee Policy Analyst. For the record, I would just like to note that if there are additional questions, the committee can have the NIAA coordinate with me to get that for them as well.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. So now we will go to Assemblywoman Hanson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Anderson, I was curious a couple of things. One of my questions got answered in the last round of questioning, and I appreciate our chairman clarifying that COVID has taught us that maybe perhaps post-COVID, as a way of saving money and being more efficient, we might be able to do some of the Zoom meetings for board meetings and such in the future. I'm curious as to why wasn't a parent or parents not considered as part of the original nonprofit when you set up your original governing boards? Was that ever explored before?
Well, I can't speak for when the NIAA was originally formed. I was actually a student athlete at the time. That was back in the 1970s. But since my involvement, one thing I can tell you is the NIAA is different than you might think from the standpoint of other athletics, youth athletics. We're not Little League. We're not soccer or anything else. This is high school education-based sports. And as I say, if you look at the enabling legislation that led to the creation of the NIAA, the direction was that the 17 superintendents create the association, which they did back in, I believe it was 1973 or so, or 1975. I'm sorry. Anyway, there wasn't consideration of parent involvement because of the educational-based nature of high school athletics, and you know that the various regions of the state be represented by educators and individuals involved with athletics, and that's kind of been the makeup of the board ever since.
And Chair, if I could just follow up with one last point.
Sure.
Thank you for that, Mr. Anderson. And as a parent of 8 children who all participated in local sports, high school sports, I'm thrilled with this legislation because I do think, yes, educationally, the NIAA is involved, but athletically, it makes just sense that athletes be a part of the process, especially as represented by parents. So I'm grateful to have this legislation come forward and appreciate you being available for questions. Thank you so much, Chair.
Thank you.
No problem. And we have one more question, I believe, for Assemblywoman Torres. I think that you're going to ask the question that I was going to ask, so I reserve my right to ask it if you don't, but go ahead, Assemblywoman.
All right, thank you, Chair. And so I just want to clarify because you mentioned, Mr. Anderson, and I appreciate you for being here, but you mentioned in your comments earlier that the NIAA is a separate nonprofit. They're not funded with public funds, but I just want to clarify my understanding at the present is that schools are paying dues to the NIAA and schools are obviously publicly funded. So my understanding is that the nonprofit NIAA is receiving public funds. It's just through a different process. I just want to clarify that there are still funds going from our public money here in the state of Nevada.
Yes, as I mentioned, part of the funding comes from membership dues, which is funding from the member schools. The majority of whom are public schools, but we have many private schools also, and they also pay. And certainly those are a form of public money, but it's minuscule in terms of what the costs are to run a statewide athletic association.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. And I also am aware that, the organization is also receiving additional funds from like ticket prices. As an educator, I've gone to a number of games where I have to pay a ticket. Sometimes I can get it waived, but other times I'm paying the fees as well. So my understanding though is a lot of that money is coming from the school community, the school organizations, and the school. So I just wanted that clarified because it is definitely within our power as a legislative body and as a committee to kind of put in additional guidelines of any organization that we're going to allow for our public funds to be used in.
Thank you, Assemblywoman. And we will, I believe, did you have a question, Assemblyman Flores?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you, Mr. Anderson. So I understand your concern about the expenses with some of the parents, and anybody that participates in a board has to contemplate these different factors such as expenses before they would accept the position. That's just something that any individual has to contemplate, not just the parent. So to me, logically, it's okay to bring up that point, but I don't know how that makes this bad legislation. So that's one point. But really my question to you is, because the whole point of this conversation is this board better with parents? And it's a yes or no answer. But if the answer is no, I would like for you to explain why. Because at the end of the day, that's what we're saying. We want to bring parental participation. And we think that that's good. But it sounds to me, and you did raise a concern that you're not sure who the parents may be and that we're not setting these parameters. I think we're trying to give flexibility, right? You don't want to narrowly tailor that in a way that we're tying hands. We want to give the flexibility to allow for parental involvement, and we want to give that discretion to that board. But I'm trying to figure out what the problem is with having parents involved, if there is one, or maybe you agree parents are good. So if you could just help me understand that.
Okay, well, first of all, I don't know if you understood my answer with respect to the funding part. The NIAA pays the costs of all board members, and that's all I'm saying is not receiving direct money from the state of Nevada to run the association. The NIAA operates on a pretty thin budget. So adding 2 parent representatives, for instance, to our board of control, there's going to be added costs that's unfunded for the association. That's just a fact. In an already strapped budget prior to COVID, and now we've got the COVID situation, and we don't have money coming in from gate receipts or anything else, and haven't had it for this entire year. And hopefully, obviously, this is maybe just one glitch of a year, but that's one. I just wanted to clarify that on the funding. As far as is the board better or worse having parents? I don't know the answer to that. My thought is, one, parents have always had the opportunity to be involved. We are, although, like I say, not funded directly by the state, we're required to comply with the open meeting law, and we do. Parents always have the opportunity to participate through public comment. And parents have the ability to participate through our liaisons, through our board members, and everything else in terms of concerns. And those concerns are brought to the board, when there is parental concerns. So adding parents to the board, to the extent there's, you take the funding issue out of it, you're taking a 9-member board now to an 11-person board. Does it make a heck of a lot of difference? I don't know. Yeah, having another voice from another faction of the state, that's not a bad thing, I guess. But ensuring that those people have the educational experience and background to understand what education-based athletics are about. And like I say, and I don't mean any disrespect, but you get a lot of parents that you go to any high school game that are living through their children and whatnot, and that's not the type of person that we're going to want on this board. We want somebody that understands the value of.
Thank you. We're going to move on.
Okay.
We're going to move on. We're getting into a little bit of speculation on who board members would be, and so let's move on. Do we have anybody else calling in opposition?
Caller with the last 3 digits of 015, please press star 6 now to unmute. And caller, you will have 2 minutes. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record, and you may begin.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, appreciate the opportunity to testify at this time. My name is Bart Thompson. I am the Executive Director of the NIAA. My name is spelled BARTTHOMPSON. There are some concerns that we have with the bill as it's currently constituted, and I appreciate Mr. Anderson, our attorney, answering a number of questions. I'm not going to take very long because he handled most of what I was going to say. But the unique form of competition that our schools engage in helps to promote the educational mission of those schools. And so the desire to have those who are working day to day in education or a part of it is incredibly strong. The idea that where these 2 new representatives are going to come from is going to become a fairly major issue because wherever they come from, the representation as it currently is constituted through regulations of the NIAA is going to be skewed in the direction of the geographic area of the state from which they come as well. In terms of advising and that type of thing, we always welcome parents being part of it. There are a number of parents that I consult with fairly regularly as we move forward to get an idea of those people who are outside. As far as students go, there are some of our advisory committees that we do place students on. Our sportsmanship committee is one example of that. There are other committees that meet fairly regularly and often in person. That would be difficult on students as they would miss probably a full day of school each time those meet. Whereas the educators that we meet with have the ability to be to those meetings. We currently do have 4 Board of Trustees members serving on our Board of Control, one from Washoe School District, one from Clark School District, one from Carson School District, and one from Story County School District. The other 5 are appointed by boards that they represent. The state is divided into 4 regions, geographic regions, and each of those regions has a number of representatives on our board based on the student enrollment in that region. So, for instance,
Mr.
Clark
Thomas?
County is
Mr.
is our region. Yes.
You are well over the 2 minutes, so if you could just wrap up your testimony. Any other information? I know you did submit a letter in opposition, and I think we in that letter you went over a lot of this information, and all members of the board, and we will make sure that is up as an exhibit for the public as well. But if you just want to just finish up what you're saying so we can move on to, we do have another bill that we have to hear today as well.
Appreciate it, and I appreciate that second bill as well. We're in support of that one. Bottom line is those who are elected to boards of trustees for their school districts are elected by those parents, and those parents do have the voice through those boards of trustees who do select the board members that make the policies for the NIAA. Appreciate your time, appreciate your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas. Broadcast, do we have any more callers in opposition?
Chair, there are no more callers in opposition at this time.
Thank you. And is there anyone wishing to testify in neutral on this bill?
To testify in neutral on AB 105, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, at this time, there are no callers in the queue to testify in the neutral position on AB 105.
Okay, we will close the opposition, the neutral, support, opposition, and neutral for this bill 105, AB 105. Assemblyman Roberts, did you have any other comments, closing comments that you would like to make?
I'd just like to say thank you, Madam Chair, for hearing the bill and being patient with the testimony on both sides of it. I really appreciate all the questions and suggestions by the committee. I'll put an amendment together so that we can clarify those things and maybe address some concerns of the opposition and get that back to you in short order.
Sounds great. Thank you very much. And with that, I am going to close the hearing on AB 105, and I'm going to open the hearing on Assembly Bill 136. I'm now going to pass the gavel to Vice Chair Miller, since I will be presenting on this bill.
All right. Chair Bilberry Axelrod, as you've already officially opened the hearing on the bill, please proceed when you are ready.
Thank you very much, Vice Chair. Thank you, Madam Vice Chair and members of the committee. For the record, I am Shannon Bilbray Axelrod, representing Assembly District 34 in Clark County. Thank you for the time and consideration of Assembly Bill 136, which revises provisions to the Uniform Athlete Agent Act. With me this afternoon is former Assemblywoman Shay Bacchus from the Uniform Law Commission. I called her Bacchus. Her last name is Bacchus, Shay Bacchus from the Uniform Law Commission. I'm going to provide a bit of background and then I will hand things over to her. Little background on the bill. As many of you may know, the Uniform Law Commission promotes enactment of uniform laws in various areas of state law. Nevada adopted the first version of this bill in 2001, and again in 2017 when I carried a bill revising it. The Uniform Law Commission revised the act again after we met in 2019 allowing student athletes more freedom and flexibility when choosing between entering a professional draft or continuing their college education. These changes were made because of actions taken by the NCAA, the National Collegiate Athletic Association. These changes were made in 2018 to provide student athletes with additional flexibility. Under the new NCAA bylaws, certified sport agents can cover limited expenses of prospective or enrolled student athletes to his or her family for meals, hotels, and travel in connection with the agent selection process. Because the NCAA bylaws change conflicted with the Uniform Athlete Agents Act, the NCAA asked the ULC to amend the Uniform Act to remove the conflict. These revisions are reflected in this bill. So far, 11 states have adopted these changes, and another 5, including Nevada, have pending legislation. The changes will enact current law and continue our regulations of athlete agents for the best interest of our students and colleges. Madam Vice Chair and committees and members of the committee, I'll now turn this over to my colleague, former Assemblywoman Shea Backus, and she will go over the sections of the bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Bilbray-Axelrod, and thank you, Vice Chair Miller and members of the Education Committee. For the record, I am Shea Backus. I am also here in my capacity as a commissioner for Nevada on the National Conference of Commissioners on Uniform State Laws, often referred to as the Uniform Law Commission. Today, it is my pleasure to introduce AB 136 with Chair Bilbray-Axelrod, which adopts changes to the revised Uniform Athlete Agents Act. I want to first take a moment to thank Chair Bilbray-Axelrod for sponsoring this amendment to an existing Uniform Act and working on this legislation. As she had mentioned, we are also grateful for her sponsoring Assembly Bill 372 that enacted the revised Uniform Athlete Agents Act in 2017. Prior to walking this committee through the bill, I want to take a moment to provide you a brief history of the Uniform Law Commission. The Uniform Law Commission was established in 1892 to provide states with nonpartisan, well-conceived, and well-drafted legislation to bring clarity and stability to critical areas of state statutory law. Uniform Law Commission members include judges, legislators, law professors, and legislative staff, all of whom must be attorneys qualified to practice law, who are appointed by state and territorial government to research, draft, and promote enactment of uniform state laws in areas of state law where uniformity is desirable and practical. Chapter 219 of the Nevada Revised Statutes provides how members are appointed to the ULC in Nevada. ULC's deliberative and uniquely open drafting process draws on the expertise of commissioners, but also utilizes input from legal experts and advisors and observers representing the views of the other legal organizations and interests that will be subject to the proposed law. ULC stays up to date by addressing important and timely legal issues, such as the need for an amendment to the revised Uniform Athlete Agents Act to comport with newly implemented NCAA bylaws allowing agents to cover certain expenses for certain athletes. Now I will walk you through AB 136, setting forth the proposed amendments to Nevada's existing revised Uniform Athlete Agents Act, which is codified under Chapter 398A of the Nevada Revised Statutes. The major change in this bill begins on page 2, line 21 through line 31 of the bill. These amendments specify that agent cannot provide anything of value that might affect the athlete's eligibility to participate in his or her chosen sport unless 1, the agent notifies the student's educational institution within 72 hours after providing the thing of value, and 2, the student athlete or the minor student athlete's parents or guardian acknowledges on the record that this action could result in the athlete's loss of eligibility. On page 3 of the bill, beginning at line 11 through line 16,
provisions are added that restrict other individuals for acting on an agent, like on an athlete agent's behalf to engage in prohibited actions. There's been various terms that will be used that get like the connection between agent and the athlete, and this now just make sure we're covering all of those aspects. While it seemed pertinent with the prior language of the bill to prohibit all athlete agents from providing anything of value to student athletes, it was discovered after various scandals of corruption in 2017 that there needs to be a change to allow student athletes the opportunity to explore professional contracts without giving up the right to continue to attend college, provided they remain academically and otherwise eligible. As Chair Bilberry Axelrod indicated, the NCAA had changed its bylaws to permit sports agents to cover certain payments for student athletes and family members for meals, hotels, and travel in connection with recruiting and signing the student athletes as a client. Since a change to the NCAA bylaws would violate the criminal provisions found in NRS 398A.400 subsection 4 of the bill, which also can be found in AB 136 on page 3 at lines 20 to 24. This amendment is now being proposed to accommodate the changes that were made to the NCAA bylaws, thereby allowing student athletes to take advantage of the freedom and flexibility given by them by the NCAA without losing the opportunity to remain a college athlete. Ultimately, these revisions are designed to minimize the leverage of harmful outside influence on high school recruits and college student athletes. And with that, I would be happy to answer any questions that you may have regarding this bill.
Thank you for that. Committee members, do we have any questions? Assemblywoman Nguyen?
Hi there. Thank you for your presentation, Chair. I do have a question. I appreciate this. It's always good to see Ms. Backus here nerding out on details and policies of laws. So were there any other changes that you suspect that we will need to make it even more fluid?
Thank you, Chair. When actually, thank you. Thank you for the question by and through Vice Chair Miller to Assemblywoman Nguyen Shea Backus for the record.
Please go directly.
Thank you, Vice Chair Miller. It's interesting because actually this bill is a little broader than what the NCAA bylaw had provided. The NCAA bylaw addressed basically basketball players because that was what the need was and the study that was performed. Because of that, the uniform law made it a little broader and didn't just limit it to basketball players and just allowed it to all student athletes. So definitely, if that was the answer to your question, the other side of it is to also to make sure anyone that's acting like an agent, I think it was expanded in the revised version that Chair Bilberry Axelrod brought in 2017 that now is just being broadened a little more, and I think we're okay with that at this time.
No, that was perfect. Thank you.
Any additional questions? Okay, well, Ms. Backus and Chair Bilberry Axelrod, seeing no questions right now, we will move into testimony for in support. So broadcasting, if we have anyone online that's queued up to testify in support of Assembly Bill 136. And while we're waiting, just a reminder that we would appreciate if everyone could keep their testimonies to 2 minutes. Broadcasting,
Chair?
do we have anyone?
At this time, the public line is open and working, but there are no callers in queue to testify on AB 136.
Is that no one to testify in support or no one to testify at all?
No one to testify at all, Chair.
Okay, so we'll give just another moment because I know the hearing was quick, and give people a moment to dial in if that's what they're doing.
For those that just joined, to testify in support on AB 136, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits of 184, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Yes, my name is Jeffrey Proffitt. Last name's Proffitt, and I represent Sheet Metal Local 88 here in Las Vegas. Madam Chair, I would like to speak in support of this bill. Again, like I mentioned in the last bill, I have a 6'4", 240-pound 17-year-old boy that is about to go into college, and this is something that we've had to deal with. A lot of people bombarding him, even though as big as he is, he's still a kid, and everybody wants a piece of him and wants to give him things, and we have to really watch what we're doing. And I appreciate this bill. Anything that we could do to protect these young students and parents that don't always know the rules and give them a way to report when something happens. I appreciate this bill, and we're in support.
Thank you. Broadcasting, do we have another caller?
Chair, at this time, there are no more callers in the queue for support on AB 136.
Okay. Do we have anyone in the queue for opposition?
Chair, currently at this time, there's nobody in the queue for opposition or neutral on AB 136.
Okay, thank you so much. Well, with that, I would invite our presenters. Do you have any closing remarks?
Did we get neutral as well?
There is no one in neutral.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to, didn't want to mess up. I don't have any closing remarks. Ms. Backus, to you?
Thank you, Chair Bilbray Axelrod. I would just want to thank the committee and thank you, Vice Chair Miller, for stepping in and covering this so that Chair Bilbray Axelrod could present AB 136. And I'm available if anyone has questions outside, but thank you for your time today and your service to our state.
And thank you as well. It's always a joy to see you. And we appreciate you continuing your service to our state by helping to present this bill. So with that, I will go ahead and close the hearing on AB 136 and hand the gavel back over to Chair Bilbray Axelrod.
Got it. Thank you very much, Vice Chair. Now we will move on to public comment. Before we go to this agenda item, I would like to remind those presenting in the period of public comment that this is an opportunity to discuss general matters that fall in with the purview of this committee. Additionally, remember to clearly state and spell your name and limit your comments to 2 minutes or as close there as possible. Staff in our broadcast and production services, please add the first caller with public comment to the meeting.
To testify with public comment, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. To testify with public comment, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, at this time, the line is open and working, but we have no callers in queue for public comment.
Thank you very much, broadcast. Are there any comments from members before we adjourn? All right, seeing no comments, I will say that our next meeting will be Tuesday, March 2nd at 1:30. That concludes our meeting for today, and meeting is adjourned.